Chosen one. Stop scrolling. Heaven has interrupted your timeline for a reason. This is not just another message. This is your divine summons. The final assignment has been activated, and only one voice can answer the call. Yours. There are no coincidences in the kingdom. This moment has been written in the scrolls of eternity long before you took your first breath. God marked this intersection of time to awaken your yes. A yes that holds weight in the unseen realm. A yes that will ripple through generations. A yes that angels have been waiting for. You have sensed the tension, the invisible pressure, the overwhelming urgency pressing into your spirit lately. It is not anxiety. It is not confusion. That stirring in your chest, that tightening in your soul, is what happens when heaven knocks and earth hesitates. You are feeling the vibration of divine transition. The earth is groaning, and your spirit knows. Something is shifting, and I am part of it. There are angels stationed at the edge of obedience, waiting for you to respond, not with hesitation, not with delay, but with clarity, with fire, with a resounding yes. Because this is no ordinary moment. This is the moment where destinies diverge. The Lord speaks through the prophet Ezekiel, chapter 22, verse 30. I looked for someone who would build up the wall and stand in the gap before me on behalf of the land. But I found no one. Let it not be said of your generation that heaven searched and found no one willing. Let it not be said that angels stood ready, but the called one remained silent. God is still searching. But today, He's not scanning the crowd. He's looking at you. Chosen one. Do not mistake your pain for punishment. That wilderness wasn't wasted. The sleepless nights, the rejections, the betrayals, the false starts, all of it was training. Heaven was not ignoring you, it was equipping you. You were hidden, not forgotten, forged, not forsaken. Every tear was currency. Every wound became a weapon. Every delay was divine. You've been walking around like a civilian, but the truth is, you're a soldier in disguise. Your spirit was coded for warfare. That's why normal life has never satisfied you. That's why shallow conversations exhaust you. That's why your heart breaks for things other people ignore. Because you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to break through. The final assignment requires full surrender. Not comfort, not control, but obedience. You won't get all the answers in advance. You won't see every step. But that's the beauty of it. Heaven doesn't need you to understand. It needs you to obey. There's a kind of yes that cracks atmospheres open. A yes that terrifies darkness. And that kind of yes is inside you right now. This is not a call for the crowd. This is a call for the called out ones. For those who were never meant to fit in. For those who feel everything too deeply. For those who carry more than they can explain. For those who know deep down, I was born for more than this. You are not being awakened for applause. You are being activated for assignment. This final chapter of your obedience will not be written in comfort, but it will be written in glory. There is a scroll with your name on it, and it is sealed until your voice unlocks it. Don't say no because you feel unworthy. Heaven never asked for your perfection, only your permission. The same God who called Moses with a stutter, David with a sling, and Mary with no status is calling you. And the same power that raised Christ from the grave lives in you, ready to complete this assignment through your surrendered yes. So rise up. Shake the dust of fear from your feet. Close the doors of hesitation behind you. The time for questioning is over. The time for obedience is now. Your yes is not a whisper. It is a declaration of war against every force that tried to silence you. Chosen one. If your spirit is burning, it's because heaven is hovering. The scroll is open. The angels are ready. And your assignment is calling. If this resonates in your spirit, subscribe now to stay connected with this movement. Share this with another hidden warrior. God is awakening. And as a prophetic act of surrender, comment the number 144 below, symbolizing the remnant army God is raising for this final hour. Heaven has moved. Now it's your turn. What will your answer be? You may not realize it yet. But your yes is not just a quiet agreement. It is a spiritual weapon forged in fire. Every time you obey what heaven whispers, chains begin to fall. Darkness takes a step back. You weren't called to be comfortable. You were called to be effective. And nothing in the spiritual realm moves until someone like you dares to say, "Yes, Lord, I'll go." You've wondered why the resistance has been so intense lately. Why the pressure won't let up. Why? In moments where everything seems calm on the outside, your spirit still feels like it's at war. It's because the enemy knows your obedience is a threat. He's not attacking your personality, your appearance, or your emotions. He is after your yes. The darkness doesn't care if you go to church, read your Bible, or speak positively as long as you don't obey. But the moment your obedience aligns with heaven's timing, that's when things start to shake. That's when strategies of hell begin to collapse. Your obedience is not just about your breakthrough. It triggers freedom for others. This is why the battle in your mind has been so relentless. Why the enemy tries to convince you that your yes is insignificant. Because if you ever realized what was tied to your obedience, you'd never hesitate again. When you obey, you open spiritual gates. You give heaven legal access to invade dark places. Your yes is not small, it's seismic. There are people whose lives will be changed, not because you were loud, or famous, or perfect, but simply because you said, yes. Yes to the uncomfortable. Yes to the unknown. Yes to the sacred voice that called you when no one else saw you. Obedience is not about understanding, it's about trust. You trust the one who sent the command more than your need to see the map. As recorded in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 2, all these blessings will come on you and accompany you if you obey the Lord your God. Heaven doesn't just reward obedience, it runs after it. The blessings don't merely follow, they overtake. That's the force of divine alignment. That's the power released when your yes and God's will collide. It's not always about saying yes with your lips. Sometimes, yes looks like showing up when no one claps for you. Yes looks like forgiving when it would be easier to walk away. Yes looks like breaking a generational cycle by choosing holiness when compromise would be more comfortable. And when you say yes, truly say it with your life. Not just your language, creation responds. You may not feel anything shift right away. But in the spirit, angels are deployed, assignments are released, strongholds begin to weaken. The spirit realm doesn't move at the sound of inspiration, it moves at the sound of obedience. You may think, but I've failed before. Good. That means you know how much grace it took to get here. Obedience is not perfection. It is surrender. Even Jesus, the Son of God, had to walk in obedience even to death on a cross. He didn't obey because it was easy. He obeyed because eternity was tied to it. So is yours. The enemy fears the moment you stop explaining yourself and start obeying. The moment you stop trying to control the outcome and simply follow the voice. He's not scared of your gifting, he's terrified of your alignment. Because your yes sets things in motion that no demon can stop. Obedience unlocks things you can't even imagine yet. It reroutes your destiny. It rebuilds places in your life that were ruined. It gives angels permission to act. It shuts doors no man can open, and opens doors no man can shut. You've been praying for breakthrough, clarity, and favor. But the key isn't in doing more. It's in surrendering deeper. The greatest victories in Scripture didn't come through force. They came through obedience. Walls fell when Joshua marched. Seas parted when Moses stretched out his hand. Chains broke when Paul and Silas sang. And now heaven waits on you, not for your perfection, for your yes, chosen one. Your life is not ordinary. Your yes carries weight in heaven. So whatever God has whispered, do it. Whatever He's called you to lay down, release it. Wherever He's sending you, step into it. Because obedience is your weapon. And now is the time to use it. Heaven is not waiting on your perfection. Heaven is waiting on your agreement. And when you finally say yes with your whole life, heaven isn't the only realm that moves. The angelic realm begins to activate. Chosen one, your voice carries more weight than you realize. You've been silent too long, not because you had nothing to say, but because the enemy has done everything he can to muzzle your sound. But your voice isn't random, it's strategic. When it aligns with heaven, it shakes foundations. There is a reason the war against your voice has been fierce. There is a reason you've been misunderstood, talked over, dismissed, and ignored. The enemy didn't want you to discover that when you speak, things shift. And not just in the physical. Your voice causes tremors in spiritual realms. The book of Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 9, gives us a glimpse of what happens when heaven touches a human mouth. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth. This wasn't just for Jeremiah, it's a prophetic pattern. Heaven is still touching mouths, still authorizing voices, still placing divine assignments on human tongues. And yours has been marked. You felt it in moments where you speak truth, and silence falls. In moments where your words break tension, in moments where others lean in, and even you wonder where that boldness came from. That's not charisma. That's not personality. That's fire, holy fire. But here's the truth. Until your voice is fully surrendered, it's still vulnerable to being used by the wrong kingdom. The enemy doesn't just want you quiet, he wants you contaminated, distracted, bitter, offended. Because if he can twist your voice, he can distort your assignment. That's why God is calling you now, not just to speak, but to speak what heaven is saying, not to echo the culture, but to release what's written in the scrolls of heaven. Your voice was designed to carry a frequency that breaks strongholds, and the time to release it is now. This isn't about volume. It's not about shouting. It's about authority. When you speak under obedience, you speak under unshakable weight. That's why demons recognize Jesus, not because he yelled, but because he spoke with authority. And that same authority is in you, waiting to be activated by surrender. Your words don't need to be perfect. They need to be pure and aligned. And once they are, even a whisper from you becomes a war cry in the spirit. You've been asking God to speak louder, but maybe God is waiting for you to speak first. Maybe your obedience in speaking what He already told you will unlock the next instruction. God doesn't waste words, and He doesn't waste voices. So if He gave you one, it's because He intends to use it. What's been trying to silence you? Who told you your voice was too much, too emotional, too intense? Who convinced you that quietness was safer than obedience? Chosen one. Safety is not your calling. Impact is, and impact requires sound. Now is not the time to shrink. Now is not the time to second guess. Now is the time to speak. Not just opinions, but prophetic declarations, not just feelings. But divine truth. There are chains waiting to be broken by a sound that only your voice can carry. You are not voiceless. You are not powerless. You are not muted by God. You are being positioned. But once He says, release, you can't afford to hold back. There are people whose next level depends on your courage to speak. Let this be your moment of unlocking. Say what heaven is saying. Declare what hell has tried to hide. Use your voice as the sword. It was always meant to be. And if this word is stirring something in your spirit, if you know your voice has been dormant for too long, I want you to comment boldly right now. I will speak. End quote. Write it. Declare it. Seal it. Because when you type it, you're not just commenting, you are prophetically unlocking the next dimension of your sound. And every demon that tried to silence you will regret the day you found your voice again. This isn't just about using your voice, it's about reclaiming authority. When you speak in alignment with heaven, your words don't just echo, they create, they establish, they tear down lies and build up truth. So when you say, I will speak, you're drawing a line in the spirit and announcing no more silence, no more delay, no more fear. You are stepping into divine boldness right now. You've wondered why your life felt different, why your story didn't unfold like everyone else's, why isolation found you when you longed for connection, why doors shut that should have opened, and why battles seem to reach for you even when you weren't moving. The answer is simple but sacred. You were being prepared in secret. Nothing about you is accidental. Your detours were not delays, they were design. Heaven has always been strategic with its warriors, and before it launches a chosen one into visibility, it hides them in mystery. God doesn't build destiny in spotlights, He builds it in shadows. You've mistaken your hidden seasons for rejection, but heaven calls them refinement. Just as gold must endure fire and blades must be hammered into form, so too were you placed under pressure not to break you, but to forge you. You were never forgotten. You were being formed. There are things about your story you still don't understand. Unanswered prayers, painful ends, sudden shifts. And yet, looking back, something inside you knows. God was in it all, even in the silence, even in the ache. Heaven was shaping you for an assignment that could not afford premature exposure. The prophet Isaiah once declared in chapter 45, verse 3, I will give you the treasures of darkness and riches stored in secret places, so that you may know that I am the Lord, the God of Israel, who summons you by name. Oh, this is the kind of calling on your life, one that comes not from a public stage, but from the hidden place of fire and glory. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness, not as a punishment, but as preparation to lead others through their own. David was anointed king, but sent back to the sheep, not to be dismissed, but to be developed. Joseph was given dreams, but thrown into a pit, not to be destroyed, but to be positioned. God allowed certain things to fall apart, to make room for what could not be shaken. He allowed certain relationships to fail, so you wouldn't anchor yourself to what couldn't carry your anointing. He allowed people to misjudge you, so you would stop trying to be understood and start seeking to be obedient. There's a kind of authority that doesn't come from titles, it comes from scars, from surviving what should have taken you out, from walking through fire and not smelling like smoke. And that authority is now resting on your life because of what you've endured in silence. You've fought battles no one saw, cried prayers no one heard, made sacrifices no one applauded, but heaven recorded it all. There is a divine record of your obedience in the dark, the seeds you sowed in faith, the tears you cried in private, the decisions you made out of conviction. They are not forgotten. Chosen one, you've been hidden, not buried. What looked like the end was actually a planting, and what's been planted in obedience always grows back in power. The root system heaven grew in you during your silent seasons is what will hold the weight of the glory coming next. God's not just interested in sending you, He's interested in sustaining you. And that's why the process has taken so long, because the oil on your life is not cheap. It came through crushing. And now, when you move, you won't move with noise, you'll move with weight. The people who overlooked you were never meant to recognize you. Heaven hid you because exposure at the wrong time is sabotage. If they had seen you too soon, they would have tried to define what they didn't understand. So God covered you, protected you, trained you in silence until now. Now, there is a shift. The hidden season is lifting. But remember this, what was built in the secret place is what will keep you in the spotlight. Don't trade intimacy for influence. Don't exchange your altar for attention. Because what's coming requires people who were built in fire, not fashioned for fame. And you, chosen one, are ready. You don't rise as someone who needs validation. You rise as someone who carries revelation. What you learned in the cave will be your compass in the commission. You will not lead from performance, but from presence. You will not speak to impress, but to deliver. The hidden place has become your holy ground, and now your feet are trained for territory. So when the light shines on you, don't shrink. Remember the shadows that shaped you, and walk forward with fire. There comes a point in every chosen one's journey where the world simply becomes too small. The conversations feel shallow. The distractions become heavy. The places you used to blend in now irritate your spirit, and you wonder, what's happening to me? Let me tell you clearly, Earth can't hold you anymore. The divine assignment over your life has grown beyond the dimensions of comfort. You've been stretched, not because you're broken, but because you're being elevated. You've been pulled away from people and environments, not out of punishment, but because your spirit has outgrown their atmosphere. The old wineskins can no longer contain the new oil God is releasing through you. What once satisfied you now feels empty. What once entertained you now drains you. That's not you being ungrateful, it's your calling increasing in volume. You're not restless because you lack clarity. You're restless because your spirit is being awakened to a higher realm, and the lower things of this world can no longer sustain you. The Apostle Paul once wrote to the church in Colossae, chapter 3, verse 2, "Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things." And that's exactly what's happening to you. Your focus is shifting. Your appetite is changing. Heaven is realigning your heart for the weight of the final assignment. And the more your soul opens up to it, the more this world begins to lose its grip. People might call you distant. Some will say you're too intense now. Others will wonder where the old you went. But let them talk. Let them misunderstand. You weren't created to stay where you started. Growth always costs familiarity, and elevation always demands separation. You're not being arrogant. You're being called up, called into deeper waters, into spiritual dimensions where shallow connections can't survive. God is pruning what can't go with you, and while it hurts in the natural, your spirit is already rejoicing. Because deep down, you know, you've crossed over, chosen one. You've been walking with an ache that words couldn't explain, a pull inside you, almost unbearable at times, a divine restlessness. That's because you're not just transitioning, you're transforming. You're stepping out of false identity and into divine clarity. The version of you that was shaped by survival is being shed. The version of you built on fear, people-pleasing, and false peace is crumbling. Why? Because God is now revealing the version He originally designed. This world cannot contain that version. This world can't reward it. It can't explain it. And it certainly can't imitate it. You've been marked by something eternal, and that mark now demands a new level of stewardship. You can't live common when you've been called consecrated. That's why the Holy Spirit has been agitating what used to feel normal. That's why you can no longer tolerate gossip, spiritual compromise, lukewarm conversations, or mindless scrolling. That's why you feel the urge to clean out your space, protect your energy, and fast from the noise. This is not coincidence. This is heaven preparing your environment for what's coming next. So don't apologize for the distance. Don't feel guilty for outgrowing what once fit. You're not being dramatic. You're being delivered. Delivered from the shallow, delivered from the cycles, delivered from the opinions that once held your wings down, and now it's time to fly. Your obedience is not just positioning you, it's awakening others. The more you walk in alignment, the more your life becomes a signal to those still stuck. You become proof that there is more. That yes, you can break free. That yes, you can rise without approval. That yes, you can walk away from the crowd and walk toward the cloud of glory. So, if this word is resonating with your spirit, if something inside you knows you're stepping into the unexplainable, the uncommon, and the undeniable, then you're not just watching this by chance. You're part of a movement. Don't keep this to yourself. There are others who feel the shift, but haven't found the language for it yet. Be the confirmation someone else has been praying for. Like this message. Share it. Subscribe if you haven't. And if you feel led, support this ministry however you can. Every gift helps us keep reaching those who need to hear truth. Raw and undiluted. You don't belong to this world. That's why it doesn't recognize you. But heaven sees you. Heaven calls you. And heaven is cheering as you finally take the step to leave the surface and dive deep. You're not becoming more spiritual, you're becoming more real, more in tune with who you were always meant to be. This is not a new chapter. This is a new dimension. The veil is lifting. The illusions are breaking. The weight is increasing. And yet you feel lighter. Because finally, you've let go of Earth's grip. And now you're rising. Chosen one. Listen carefully. This is not a moment to delay. Heaven is watching. And the clock in the spirit is ticking. Too many have missed their moment because they waited for confirmation after confirmation, afraid to move unless every detail was clear. But you don't have that luxury. You carry too much weight. You are too needed. Delay is not neutral. It's dangerous. Because every time you hesitate, something holy hangs in suspension. God isn't just asking you to obey because He's in control. He's asking you because others are depending on your yes. And when you delay, you're not just holding back your future, you're holding back someone else's freedom. You've told yourself, I'm just waiting for the right time. But let's be honest, you're not waiting, you're wrestling. Wrestling with fear, with inadequacy, with the fear of what happens if you go all in and lose everything. But here's the truth. No one wants to say out loud, you're losing more by standing still than you ever would by moving in faith. There's a point in every chosen one's journey where delay becomes disobedience in disguise. It wears the mask of wisdom. It pretends to be careful planning. But heaven knows the truth. You've already heard the instruction. Now you're just negotiating with fear. And the more you negotiate, the more numb your spirit becomes. Every delayed act of obedience makes the voice of God feel quieter, not because He's speaking less, but because your hesitation turns into spiritual static. You start missing moments, ignoring promptings, and convincing yourself you need more time when what you really need is more surrender. This is how destinies die, not with defiance, but with delay. The Book of Psalms, chapter 95, verses 7 and 8, carries this timeless warning. Today, if you hear His voice, do not harden your hearts. 1. Not tomorrow. Today. That's when heaven moves. That's when windows open. That's when breakthrough becomes possible. And that's also when disobedience is most deceptive, because it doesn't always shout, no. Sometimes it just whispers, not yet. 1. But chosen one. You weren't made for, not yet. You were anointed for now. You were not called to carry truth only when it's safe. You were not sent to obey only when it makes sense. You were not equipped to remain still while the enemy keeps stealing ground. You were born to take. You are a spiritual disruptor. And disruptors don't wait, they act. That's why the tension has been rising. Why you felt stirred but unsettled. God has been whispering, prompting, nudging, giving you chance after chance to respond. That wasn't coincidence. That was mercy in motion. But mercy doesn't mean the moment will last forever. Not all instructions repeat. Some doors open once and never again. And while your calling is eternal, your timing is fragile. The Book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 11, verse 4, speaks directly to this kind of hesitation. Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. Waiting for perfect conditions is how fields stay empty. If you keep checking the weather of your emotions, you'll miss the season of divine harvest. You don't need the sky to be clear. You need your yes to be strong. The longer you delay, the more risk you take that heaven will reassign what you were meant to carry. And the weight of that loss is not just personal, it's generational. Delay becomes a doorway for doubt, and doubt becomes a foothold for the enemy. Hell knows it can't uncall you. So it tries to outweight you. It hopes you'll procrastinate long enough to forget the fire, long enough to second-guess what God confirmed, long enough to numb your conviction with convenience. But this word is your wake-up call. This is your interruption. Heaven is ready. Angels are in formation. The scroll is open. The only thing left is your movement. Not someday now. Obey while your heart still burns. Act while the Spirit is still stirring. Respond while the heavens are still open. If you know this word is for you, if something in your soul is burning right now, don't overthink it. Obey it. Comment the number 444 below as a prophetic act. 444 is a number of divine alignment, heaven's way of saying, now is the time. Honolulu. Let this be the moment where hesitation ends and obedience begins. Because when you finally move, heaven will move with you. And what once felt impossible will suddenly feel inevitable. Because obedience doesn't just shift your life, it commands everything around you to come into order. There is a scroll with your name on it, written before time, sealed in heaven, and guarded by the breath of God Himself. It is not symbolic. It is not poetic. It is literal. Before your first breath, the assignment you carry was already etched into eternity, and every battle you've faced since birth has been about keeping you from opening that scroll. You may not remember when the war started, but your soul does. From childhood, you've been marked, misunderstood, rejected, pushed out of rooms you were never meant to remain in. The conflict you faced hasn't been random, it's been targeted. Because the scroll you carry holds solutions, blueprints, and movements that hell cannot replicate or replace. The terrifying truth for darkness is this: you're getting closer to the scroll. You felt it lately. That pull, that holy pressure, that sense that something ancient and divine is calling your spirit forward. You can't explain it. You can't contain it. You can't silence it. Because something deep inside you knows you were born to carry what others cannot. But what if I told you this? The scroll with your name has already been attacked. Hell has tried to burn it. Not in paper and ink, but in confusion, trauma, compromise, and delay. Every lie spoken over you, every betrayal that tried to alter your identity, every moment of shame that tried to steal your voice. Those were not just attacks against your present, they were attempts to smudge the scroll. Because if the enemy couldn't destroy your calling, his next tactic was to distort your understanding of it, to make you believe you're too broken, too far gone, too late, to convince you that maybe you missed your chance, that maybe, just maybe, there's no scroll after all. But the devil is a liar. Your scroll has not been erased. It has not been reassigned. It has not expired. It is still active, still sealed, still protected. And now, heaven is bringing it forward again because you are finally ready to read it. That's why your spirit has been stirred in recent days. That's why you feel the weight of destiny without details. Because heaven doesn't drop full instructions, it awakens holy hunger. That hunger is the key. That ache is the invitation. You wouldn't feel this if the scroll wasn't near. The prophet Ezekiel had a moment like this. In the 3rd chapter of his book, he stood before the Lord and received his scroll not to frame it, but to eat it, to internalize the words and become the message. As recorded in Ezekiel chapter 3, verses 1 and 2, he said to me, "Son of man, eat what is before you, "Eat this scroll, then go and speak to the people of Israel." So I opened my mouth, and he gave me the scroll to eat. This wasn't just about reading, it was about becoming, and that's what's happening to you now. The scroll isn't something you study, it's something you live. It transforms how you move, how you see, and how you speak. This is why your process has been long, because God is not just preparing a message, He's preparing a messenger. You. Not everyone unlocks their scroll. Some run from it. Some dilute it. Some pretend they never felt the call. But you've felt the burn. And now, that burn is turning into boldness. Not because you have it all figured out, but because you can no longer pretend you weren't chosen. There is something holy written over your life. And every step you've taken in the dark has been moving you toward the moment when the scroll opens and the words leap into your bones. You are not just carrying a message, you are the message. You are the proof that the scroll cannot be stopped. So now, you don't just move forward, you move in alignment. Every step is holy. Every word is appointed. And every moment ahead is written in the scroll with your name. And the scroll, it's not finished yet. Heaven is still writing through your obedience. Every time you say yes, another line is etched in eternal ink. Every act of surrender fills another page. Every moment you choose purpose over comfort. The next chapter is secured. So don't walk like someone uncertain. Walk like someone sent. Speak like someone carrying sacred words. Live like someone who has read the scroll and remembers what it cost to carry it. Because you are not just living for today. You are fulfilling what was written before time began. You weren't sent to blend in. You were born to dismantle thrones. Not earthly ones made of gold and politics, but spiritual thrones. Hidden systems. Invisible powers, principalities that have ruled over families, cities, bloodlines, and belief systems for generations. These aren't myths. They are ancient structures, and your life has been marked to challenge and overthrow them. That's why the warfare you face doesn't make sense to those around you. Because it's not just about your life. It's about what your life threatens to dismantle. You don't just carry purpose, you carry disruption. And hell is never quiet when a disruptor wakes up. You've walked into rooms and felt resistance without a word. You've entered environments and sensed agitation in people who didn't even know you. That's not paranoia. It's your spirit colliding with spiritual architecture that's been ruling unchecked for far too long. The calling on your life is not just to be blessed, favored, or elevated. You are here to interrupt demonic blueprints. You are here to tear down invisible thrones, not in your own power, but in divine authority. You were never meant to simply live a good life. You were meant to wage war in the spirit and win. In the book of Jeremiah, chapter 1, Verse 10, God gives this exact commission. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. Before you were formed in the womb, heaven already knew you would be called, not just to plant, but to pull down what opposes God. Your very presence is confrontational to systems of compromise. Your obedience shakes regions. Your purity exposes perversion. Your worship confuses principalities. You're not just carrying anointing, you're carrying divine demolition orders. This is why you can't stay quiet. Why the old version of you is breaking apart. Why God keeps calling you deeper. stripping away what no longer fits, calling out hidden agreements with fear and smallness. Because you cannot overthrow what you secretly agree with. You cannot displace what you tolerate. That's why your deliverance matters, not just for your healing, but for your authority. Every time you confront a lie within, you gain power over it in others. Every time you renounce shame, guilt, and generational patterns, the throne of that thing weakens in your bloodline. You are not just breaking free, you are taking territory. And territory isn't always land. Sometimes territory is mindsets. Sometimes it's the silence in your family, the unspoken abuse, the fear of being seen, the heavy religious spirit in your region, the poverty mentality that cripples dreams. You are being sent into places like these, not just to survive them, but to dismantle their rule. You don't need a stage to do this. You don't need a title. You don't need 10,000 followers. All you need is alignment and authority. When you walk in obedience, thrones start shaking. When you speak truth in love, lies lose their power. When you live fully surrendered, demons that ruled your family for decades start to panic. This is why the pressure's been high. Why the enemy has tried to convince you you're too weak, too broken, too unstable to be used. He doesn't fight random people. He fights those who carry blueprints that can dismantle his kingdom. If you felt attacked, it's because you're a threat, and you haven't even seen the full scope yet. The more you align with heaven, the more clearly you'll begin to see the structures beneath the surface. You'll see what's operating behind behaviors. You'll discern what others miss. And most of all, you'll feel the authority rise in your spirit to speak and act with heaven's backing. Don't be surprised when people walk away. Thrones tremble before they fall, and those attached to them will often resist you before they realize you were sent to free them. Stay gentle. Stay bold. You are not fighting people, you're confronting principalities through presence. You were born for this. Not for applause, not for attention, but for impact in the spirit. Your life is a wrecking ball to hell's architecture. You don't have to announce it. Just walk in it. The thrones will know. The spirits will feel it. And heaven will back you. You are not average. You are not soft. You are not random. You are God's response to a spiritual throne that has sat uncontested for too long. And now, because you've said yes, it has to come down. There's something different about your voice, and you've known it for a long time. Not just your tone, not just your volume, but the weight it carries when it aligns with heaven. When you speak from obedience, not emotion, not reaction, but conviction birthed in the secret place, your voice doesn't echo. It pierces. It cuts through noise. It silences confusion. It shifts atmospheres. This is not a gift you earned. It's a weapon God placed inside you. One the enemy has tried desperately to silence. That's why your voice has been under attack. Why you've struggled with doubt, fear, hesitation, and the feeling that what you say doesn't matter. But here is the truth. Your voice shakes realms. It carries weight in the spirit. It disrupts darkness. As written in the book of Proverbs, chapter 18, verse 21, life and death are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Heaven understands what your voice can create. That's why hell has tried so hard to steal it. There are things in the spirit that only move when you speak, not when you think, not when you hope, But when you release sound from a surrendered place, there's a frequency in your obedience that shatters things hell thought it had secured for generations. This is why the enemy came, for your confidence. He wanted to shut you up before you found out what your words could do. He used rejection to convince you were too much. He used silence from others to make you believe you had nothing to offer. But none of that came from God. It was all a strategy to mute the mouth that carries fire. That's why God has been purifying your speech, convicting you of how you use your words. Not because He's controlling, but because He's protective of the power inside you. He's jealous for your voice to release life. Not mixture, clarity, not compromise. There are assignments tied to your sound, chains that will only break when your obedience becomes vocal, regions that will only open when your prayers become declarations, bloodlines that will only heal when you stop apologizing for the roar in your lungs. The shaking begins when you stop whispering what God told you to proclaim. You were never meant to speak safe words. You were meant to speak holy ones. This is not about being loud, it's about being anointed. There are people who shout but shift nothing, and there are those like you who speak softly but cause tremors in the spirit, because your voice isn't powered by personality, it's powered by presence. Even when you were a child, your words held weight. That wasn't natural maturity. That was early evidence of spiritual authority. But as you grew, the world tried to convince you to shrink, to tone it down, to be agreeable, to avoid confrontation. But heaven didn't place a sword in your mouth for it to stay in its sheath. You are entering a season where your sound must be heard, not for attention, but for assignment. When you speak, systems shift. When you declare truth, hidden lies can no longer hide. When you pray, something moves. And every time you obey and release the word, the unseen trembles. That's why the tension has increased. The enemy fears your voice, but heaven is calling you to use it not recklessly, but righteously, to speak what He says. When He says it, how He says it, no edits, no apologies, no delay. Don't wait for a microphone. Don't wait for a perfect setting. Speak it now, in the car, in your house, in the quiet of your room. Speak to the atmosphere, to your generation, to the strongholds. Speak as one who has been entrusted with sound that disrupts darkness. You carry the voice of deliverance, the language of breakthrough, the sound of surrender. And if this word ignited something in your spirit, if your mouth has been burning and your soul says, "This is me," then don't scroll past this moment. Write it in the comments. I will roar. Type it. Declare it. Own it. Because when you type these words, you're not just commenting, you're stepping into your authority. You are rejecting silence. You are activating the sound of deliverance buried in your spirit. This isn't just a statement, it's a shift. Heaven hears it. Hell fears it. And everything around you will begin to respond to it. This is the moment your voice returns, not as a whisper, but as a weapon. Use it. Unleash it. You've been waiting for a sign, watching, asking, wondering, God, is it really me? Am I truly called? Is this burning in my chest more than just emotion? Listen closely. Chosen one, you're not waiting for a sign. You are the sign. There are generations watching you, people attached to your obedience, chains waiting to break, not because of what you say, but because of what you are. Your life, your presence. Your very existence is a prophetic interruption to the darkness that's ruled for far too long. The moment you rose from your lowest place and didn't quit that moment alone sent shockwaves in the spirit. You weren't just delivered, you were commissioned. The evidence that you're chosen isn't that everything is perfect. It's that you're still standing. You've faced what should have taken you out. Yet here you are awake, hungry, burning with questions, and still moving forward. That's not survival. That's proof. You're not just in the story, you are the evidence that heaven writes the impossible. People are waiting for the stars to align, for a dream, a voice, a supernatural encounter. But for some, you are the encounter. God is using your journey, your words, your breakthrough to confirm what others have been quietly praying about in the dark. You were sent not just to be seen, but to become a signal. That's why you don't fit into the mold, why you've always felt different, why the path you walk seems lonely at times. Because God didn't make you to blend in. He made you to stand out as a living message, a walking scroll, a divine marker. You're not the background, you're the wake-up call. As Jesus spoke in Matthew chapter 5, verse 14, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." Heaven understands what your voice can create. That's why hell has tried so hard to steal it. There are things in the spirit that only move when you speak. Not when you think, not when you hope, but when you release sound from a surrendered place. There's a frequency in your obedience that shatters things hell thought it had secured for generations. This is why the enemy came for your confidence. He wanted to shut you up before you found out what your words could do. He used rejection to convince you were too much. He used silence from others to make you believe you had nothing to offer. But none of that came from God. It was all a strategy to mute the mouth that carries fire. That's why God has been purifying your speech, convicting you of how you use your words. Not because He's controlling, but because He's protective of the power inside you. He's jealous for your voice to release life. Not mixture. Clarity. Not compromise. There are assignments tied to your sound. Chains that will only break when your obedience becomes vocal. Regions that will only open when your prayers become declarations. Bloodlines that will only heal when you stop apologizing for the roar in your lungs. The shaking begins when you stop whispering what God told you to proclaim. You were never meant to speak safe words. You were meant to speak holy ones. This is not about being loud, it's about being anointed. There are people who shout but shift nothing, and there are those like you who speak softly but cause tremors in the spirit. Because your voice isn't powered by personality, it's powered by presence. Even when you were a child, your words held weight. That wasn't natural maturity. That was early evidence of spiritual authority. But as you grew, the world tried to convince you to shrink, to tone it down, to be agreeable, to avoid confrontation. But heaven didn't place a sword in your mouth for it to stay in its sheath. You are entering a season where your sound must be heard, not for attention, but for assignment. When you speak, systems shift. When you declare truth, hidden lies can no longer hide. When you pray, something moves. And every time you obey and release the word, the unseen trembles. That's why the tension has increased. The enemy fears your voice. But heaven is calling you to use it not recklessly, but righteously, to speak what He says. When He says it, how He says it, No edits. No apologies. No delay. Don't wait for a microphone. Don't wait for a perfect setting. Speak it now. In the car. In your house. In the quiet of your room. Speak to the atmosphere. To your generation. To the strongholds. Speak as one who has been entrusted with sound that disrupts darkness. You carry the voice of deliverance, the language of breakthrough, the sound of surrender. And if this word ignited something in your spirit, if your mouth has been burning and your soul says, "This is me," then don't scroll past this moment. Write it in the comments. I will roar. Lom. Type it. Declare it. Own it. Because when you type these words, you're not just commenting, you're stepping into your authority. You are rejecting silence. You are activating the sound of deliverance buried in your spirit. This isn't just a statement, it's a shift. Heaven hears it. Hell fears it. And everything around you will begin to respond to it. This is the moment your voice returns, not as a whisper, but as a weapon. Use it. Unleash it. You've been waiting for a sign, watching, asking, wondering, God, is it really me? Am I truly called? Is this burning in my chest more than just emotion? Listen closely. Chosen one, you're not waiting for a sign. You are the sign. There are generations watching you. People attached to your obedience. Chains waiting to break, not because of what you say, but because of what you are. Your life, your presence, your very existence is a prophetic interruption to the darkness that's ruled for far too long. The moment you rose from your lowest place and didn't quit, that moment alone sent shockwaves in the spirit. You weren't just delivered, you were commissioned. The evidence that you're chosen isn't that everything is perfect. It's that you're still standing. You've faced what should have taken you out. Yet here you are, awake, hungry, burning with questions, and still moving forward. That's not survival. That's proof. You're not just in the story, you are the evidence that heaven writes the impossible. People are waiting for the stars to align, for a dream, a voice, a supernatural encounter. But for some, you are the encounter. God is using your journey, your words, your breakthrough to confirm what others have been quietly praying about in the dark. You were sent not just to be seen, but to become a signal. That's why you don't fit into the mold. Why? You've always felt different. Why the path you walk seems lonely at times. Because God didn't make you to blend in. He made you to stand out as a living message, a walking scroll, a divine marker. You're not the background, you were never meant to be hidden. You were meant to disrupt, to announce, to illuminate. When you walk into a room, things shift, not because of charisma, but because of calling. Darkness recognizes you. Strongholds see you coming, not because of your name, but because of the seal that's been placed upon your spirit. You carry the aroma of breakthrough, the sound of freedom, the evidence that God still raises up the rejected ones. You've been thinking too small, too humble. You've tried to shrink to make others comfortable. But this isn't about comfort, it's about kingdom. And kingdoms don't move when we hide. They move when we step into our assignment without apology. You've said, "I'm not ready, but the truth is, you're already walking in it. You just haven't fully realized how seen you already are. There are people watching how you carry this next season. People who will believe God is real simply because you didn't give up. There are demons panicking because you're still praising, still trusting, still moving. Your endurance is a weapon. Your obedience is a spotlight. You are a prophetic fulfillment in motion. So, don't underestimate what happens when you say yes. You're not just stepping into something, you're becoming something. Becoming a voice where there was once silence. Becoming an answer where there was once confusion. Becoming living proof that God still uses the least likely. You want to know what the sign is? Look in the mirror. You didn't get here by accident. This fire you feel, this pull that won't leave, this ache that refuses to be numbed, that's heaven marking you. You are not being inspired. You are being sent. And if you've felt the fire in this message, if something deep in your spirit is shaking right now, that's because heaven is confirming what your soul already knows. You were never just supposed to hear words like this. You were meant to carry them, live them, walk them out so boldly that others can follow behind your footsteps and find God. Don't let this be the word you forget tomorrow. Don't let the algorithm decide who else hears this truth. Share this. Let the sound of your obedience amplify the reach of heaven's call. Like this message, so it keeps moving through the noise. Subscribe if you haven't yet, so your spirit stays connected to words like this, written for those who've been hidden far too long. And if you feel led, support this movement. Every gift helps us keep bringing clarity to the called, strength to the weary, and language to the chosen ones like you, those awakening in the dark, looking for confirmation that yes, they are the sign. The wait is over. The moment is now. And you, yes, you are the one hell didn't see coming. You've heard people talk about angels as if they're just a metaphor, gentle ideas in children's books, or distant figures hovering somewhere in the invisible. But heaven's army is not poetic. It is real. It is active. And it is waiting for your yes. You've been taught to believe that God's sovereignty moves independently, that angels operate apart from you. But the truth is more profound and more dangerous than you were told. Heaven's movement often waits on your agreement. Angels are not automated beings. They respond to alignment. Their motion is triggered by obedience, not merely emotion. They don't act on your feelings. They act on your faith. You've been surrounded by help you didn't even know you had. There have been assignments hovering in the unseen, prepared for you, positioned around you, held back only by hesitation. Your agreement isn't a small thing. It's a spiritual switch. When you yield to God's command, heaven doesn't just applaud, it moves. This is what the enemy fears most. Not just your calling, not even your anointing, but your activation, because he knows what happens the moment you go from waiting to walking, from hoping to declaring, from wondering to obeying. That's the moment angels begin to carry out the words that have been written over your life. In the book of Psalms, chapter 103, verse 20, it is written, "Praise the Lord, you, his angels, you mighty ones who do his bidding, who obey his word." No, they don't obey your feelings. They obey the word of the Lord. And when that word is in your mouth, spoken in faith, aligned with obedience, heaven's hosts are deployed. This is why you felt the tension rise when you began stepping into the new. Why spiritual resistance grew when you decided to leave passivity behind. Because every step you take in divine obedience sends movement through realms you can't see. Angels don't move at the speed of emotion. They move at the sound of instruction. And your obedience is that sound. There are angels standing at the edge of your assignment right now. Their hands are on the scroll. Their wings are ready to move. They're not waiting for a motivational quote. They're not waiting for perfect behavior. They're waiting for alignment for your heart, your mouth, and your actions to say one thing: yes, Lord. And when that yes becomes real, when it costs you something, when it breaks delay, when it pierces through the fog of fear, that's when the invisible begins to activate. You're not walking alone into this next season. You are being escorted by glory. That nudge you felt to speak when you stayed silent, that impulse to pray when you almost rolled over in bed, that sense that something urgent is waiting beyond the veil, that was heaven trying to partner with you. You are not weak. You are not wandering. You are a command in motion, a living decree. And heaven takes that seriously. You don't have to beg God to send help. He already has. The question is no longer, are angels with me? The question is, am I moving in sync with their assignment? Because when your obedience aligns with heaven's strategy, angels don't just follow, they fight. They war in the spirit on your behalf. They push back resistance. They open up realms that have been sealed. They release messages that were delayed by warfare. They make crooked places straight and hidden things visible. Your life is not casual. It is highly coordinated by heaven. But heaven will not violate your will. It will only move where agreement is made. Angels don't override, they respond. The throne doesn't manipulate it, partners. So if it feels like things have been stuck, silent, or stalled, check for agreement, not just in your words, but in your actions. Are you delaying what God already confirmed? Are you hoping angels will move on a partial yes? They won't. They are holy. They are precise. And they move only at the speed of obedience. Your full surrender gives them full clearance. When you say yes without a backup plan, the hosts of heaven are released to do what only heaven can do. This is why your yes is heavy. This is why your obedience is costly. Because it opens corridors in the spirit that affect more than just you. Your agreement releases war strategies from the throne. Your movement gives angels assignments. Your surrender writes new routes into places the enemy thought he owned. You are not just agreeing to be used. You are opening the gates of angelic invasion. So walk boldly. Step into the divine rhythm. The angels are waiting. There's a reason you've been feeling the weight in your chest. That sense that something needs to come out of you, but you haven't known how, or when, or where. It's not just stress. It's not just pressure. It's the burden of a voice that's been silenced too long. Heaven is sounding an alarm, and you are the one it's waking up. There is a cost to silence, a spiritual cost. A cost that doesn't show up all at once, but accumulates through missed moments, buried callings, and divine assignments left dormant. When your voice is quiet, something holy stays locked. You've convinced yourself that staying silent protects your peace. But the truth is, silence has robbed you more than fear ever could, because you weren't built for background. You weren't crafted to watch from a distance. You were created to declare, to speak life, to sound the alarm, to announce what heaven is saying, even when no one else is ready to hear it. As written in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 33, verse 7, I have made you a watchman, so hear the word I speak and give them warning from me. End quote. Watchmen don't whisper. They cry out. They stand on the wall and break the silence with urgency. But you've been hesitant, haven't you? You've watched others speak loudly with no cost. You've watched people twist truth and get applause. And in the middle of that noise, you started to believe your voice wasn't necessary. But chosen voices aren't meant to echo culture. They're meant to interrupt it. You've held your tongue out of humility, but it became fear. You've waited for the perfect moment, but that turned into delay. You've tried not to offend, but it's numbed your fire. And now, heaven is calling you not just to speak again, but to break the silence completely, because if you don't speak, someone will stay bound. If you don't speak, a lie will keep circulating. If you don't speak, you risk being swallowed by the very silence you once used as a shield. Silence is no longer neutral. It has become dangerous. Heaven is not asking for perfection. Heaven is asking for permission. Permission to use your voice again. Permission to speak truth in love. Permission to break generational silence. To cast down deception. To stir dry places. To speak life over what others have given up on. You may say, "But I'm not qualified." 11. Let me tell you, neither were most who changed the world. Moses had a stutter. Jeremiah was too young. Esther was hidden. Paul was feared. Mary was unknown. But God doesn't anoint perfection. He anoints obedience. And right now, He's not looking for impressive words. He's looking for willing mouths. Your voice is not too small. Your story is not too late. Your truth is not too heavy. The very things you've tried to hide are the things heaven wants to breathe through. This isn't just about reclaiming boldness. This is about releasing what's been imprisoned. Every time you stayed silent, a piece of your purpose stayed locked. But when you speak, something opens, not just in the atmosphere, but in you. Your obedience releases oxygen. Your voice carries divine wind. Your yes breaks ceilings you didn't even know were holding you down. It's time to speak again, not as the version of you that once feared the crowd, but as the watchman God raised up to cry out in a time of compromise. This isn't about going viral. It's about going vertical, lifting your voice to heaven before it's too late. If this word has reached your soul, if something inside you is stirring, trembling, awakening again, don't suppress it. Don't analyze it. Don't wait until the emotion fades. Heaven is handing you the key to unlock your silence. Comment the number 333 below. This number is a prophetic sign of divine speech, resurrection of voice, and alignment between heaven, earth, and the mouth that speaks truth. Type it now, not to be seen, but to say it. I won't be silent anymore. Because silence has taken enough from you. Now, it's your turn to speak. The number 333 isn't random. It's a divine reminder that your voice is part of a holy trinity of action. Heaven speaks. You respond. And earth is changed. It represents completion of divine alignment between your spirit, your assignment, and your sound. When you comment 333, you're saying, "My silence ends here. Heaven, speak through me." You're not just typing numbers, you're activating permission. Permission for your voice to rise. Permission for heaven's fire to flow through you now. There's something few people will ever understand about being chosen. The loneliness doesn't come from being abandoned, it comes from being set apart. You felt it in rooms where everyone laughed, but you felt burdened. You felt it in crowds where others celebrated, but your spirit was heavy. You felt it in moments where people praised you, but you knew deep down you were being called to something deeper than applause. Chosen vessels often walk alone, not because they're unloved, but because they're being preserved. You're not being punished. You're being protected from premature exposure, unnecessary distractions, and connections that would dilute your calling. What you've called isolation, God calls consecration. There are some doors He didn't open, not because you weren't worthy, but because what's on your life requires weight-bearing solitude. There are things He wants to show you that can't be revealed in noisy company. There are layers of your identity that only unfold when everything else goes silent. This is where heaven trains the dangerous ones. Not in stages, but in stillness. Not in platforms, but in pressure. Not in applause, but in private rooms where your name is forgotten by men but known by angels. You are not being overlooked. You are being forged. This is the season where everything unnecessary has started to fall away. Friends faded. Invitations stopped. You feel invisible. But what's really happening is this. God is reducing the noise so you don't miss the whisper. You don't need more attention. You need more awareness. And He's giving it to you through sacred separation. You are not missing out. You're being positioned. In the book of Hosea, chapter 2, verse 14, the Lord speaks of how He draws His people back. Therefore I am now going to allure her. I will lead her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. Wilderness is not abandonment. It's invitation. That silence you've been hearing, that's where divine strategies are born. That stillness you've been resisting, that's where your real name is spoken. You've been aching for clarity. But clarity doesn't come through crowds. It comes through consecration. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it hurts when people don't understand your shift. When they say, you've changed, but don't know how much you've had to. But don't run from it. Don't numb it. This season isn't punishment, it's preparation. You can't walk in heavy glory with a casual spirit. You can't carry weight without being pressed. God isn't isolating you to break you. He's isolating you to build you in private before He reveals you in public. There are battles you've been fighting alone that others don't see. But just because they don't see it doesn't mean heaven doesn't. You're not invisible to the one who matters. Heaven has had eyes on you the entire time. Not a tear missed. Not a groan ignored. You are heard in the silence. And when God is silent, it doesn't mean He's absent. It often means He's working beneath the surface. Some of your greatest transformation is happening right now, not in what's changing around you, but in what's shifting within you. Your hunger is increasing. Your discernment is sharpening. Your tolerance for spiritual compromise is disappearing. These are all signs that you are being marked, not for attention, but for authority. When God marks someone with authority, He doesn't start by announcing them. He starts by separating them. It's what He did with Moses, with David, with Elijah, with Jesus. Each had a wilderness. Each had a lonely road. Each had moments where it felt like no one could relate, and in those moments, heaven whispered, identity that man could never validate. You're not going crazy. You're going deeper. This process is not rejection. It's refinement. And though the fire has been intense, it is holy fire, the kind that burns away what cannot remain. You're not losing your life. You're finding the version of you that was always meant to rise. Let others chase platforms. Let others crave validation. You've been chosen to carry presence, and that presence cannot dwell in noisy souls. So, let the silence train you. Let the solitude refine you. Let the quiet awaken your roar, because soon the one who formed you in fire will call you forth, not as one among many, but as one who was set apart for something that costs more than comfort, but pays in eternal impact. So if the wilderness still lingers, don't rush out. Don't curse it. Listen deeper. You're not being hidden. You're being trusted. Chosen one. There is a moment in every life where the veil between heaven and earth feels thinner, where time seems to pause. And your spirit knows something is shifting. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's sacred. And you are in that moment now. You may not realize it, but you're standing at a crossroads, not a casual intersection of choices, but a spiritual divergence. One path leads to comfort, the other to your calling. Most won't even recognize when they're standing here. They'll distract themselves through it, delay their decisions, numb the urgency. But not you. You felt it. That sense that where you go from here matters more than ever before. Because it does. The next step you take, the decision you make in the silence of your heart, is not just about this season. It's about generations. There is a ripple effect to your obedience. What you say yes to now echoes in the lives of people you'll never meet. The silence you break, the territory you take, the habits you confront, all of it leaves a legacy in the spirit. You're not just making moves. You're setting precedent. That's why the weight feels so real. That's why you've been battling indecision, fear of missing it, and the tormenting lie that says you're already too late. The enemy wants to rush you or paralyze you. Both are traps. But heaven wants to steady you, because when your heart is rooted in surrender, you won't miss what's yours. You've been asking for clarity, but God is waiting for courage. He's not just trying to inform you, He's trying to transform you into someone who can carry what's coming. And that transformation requires something that many avoid: decision. Not a surface-level decision, a soul-deep yes. One that pierces through fear and reaches into obedience. One that says, even if I don't feel ready, I trust that God is. That kind of yes doesn't just move things in the natural. It causes divine acceleration in the spirit. What you've been feeling isn't confusion, it's the tension between your old identity and your next level. It's not indecisiveness, it's the sound of heaven waiting for your permission. Because heaven will not force transformation. It will wait for surrender. And that's the real cost of being chosen. Not just being called, but being willing. You don't need to have all the details. You don't need to know how it ends. You just need to know that your yes still matters. Even now, especially now. The prophet Elijah once stood at a similar moment, when fire had just fallen from heaven and the people of Israel stood stunned. But they didn't shout in repentance. They didn't run to the altar. They hesitated. So Elijah didn't offer comfort. He offered a question, as recorded in the first book of Kings, chapter 18, verse 21. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. It's not just a question for ancient Israel. It's for you now. How long will you hover between what's safe and what's sacred? Between who you were and who you're becoming? Between what's familiar and what's divine? The time for delay is over. You don't need another confirmation. You need to move. This isn't about rushing. It's about responding. Obedience doesn't always feel convenient. It rarely comes with full clarity. But it always releases heaven's hand, Every major shift in scripture happened when someone said yes in secret before the public breakthrough came. Abraham, Moses, Esther, Mary, Paul. They were all confronted with the same question that now stands before you. Will you obey when it still costs something? Because that's where the oil comes from. From the crushing of hesitation, from the sacrifice of comfort, from the burial of who you thought you had to be. And in that burial, resurrection begins. This is more than a turning point. It's a holy collision between heaven's timing and your obedience. What you decide in this sacred space will set the tone for what comes next. You don't need a stage, a platform, or a title. You just need a surrendered will. You are not too late. You haven't missed it. But you must choose. Not tomorrow. Now. This kind of yes won't make you popular, but it will make you powerful. It won't guarantee applause, but it will open portals. It won't feel safe, but it will be sacred. So here you are, the moment that changes everything. This is the fork in the spirit that few recognize but heaven records. Your next step writes the next page. No more wavering, no more delay. Let your yes be loud, even if your voice shakes. There's a sound that doesn't come from talent. It doesn't come from influence, education, or charisma. It comes from obedience. And when a chosen one obeys even trembling, even without all the answers, that sound shakes the spirit realm. You may think you're just one person, walking through your own life, but in the spirit, you are a walking disruption. Every time you obey, a sound is released that reaches farther than your voice ever could. Angels hear it. Demons feel it. Heaven responds to it. Because obedience carries a sound that cannot be ignored. That's why hell has been after your obedience, not just your habits, not just your mind, but your alignment. Because once your life begins to move in sync with heaven's rhythm, everything around you must adjust. And make no mistake, something has already begun to shift. It started the moment you said yes. Not the loud yes in front of others. The quiet yes. The painful yes. The one that cost you relationships, comfort, familiarity. The yes that didn't make sense to anyone but God. That yes is still echoing. In the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 2, it is written, "All these blessings will come upon you and overtake you if you obey the Lord your God." You don't have to chase the blessing. It knows where to find you. What follows you is not based on luck. It's drawn by obedience. This is why you felt the warfare intensify. Hell only hunts what heaven highlights. And yet you're still standing, still praising, still choosing light, still getting up when it would be easier to stay down. That alone is a prophetic act. You are a living contradiction to every lie the enemy has spoken. You're not just surviving, you're disrupting darkness with every breath. This isn't the season to dim down. It's the season to go louder, not in noise, but in clarity, in boldness, in consistency. Your obedience may feel small, but in the spirit, it's seismic. You've been wrestling with whether or not your yes still matters, whether your voice still carries weight, whether your small act of faith really makes a difference. Let me tell you this, it moves more than you can see. Every comment of encouragement, every word you release in faith, every time you share light in a dark space, you are sowing into eternity. You've been holding this weight alone for too long, but you're not the only one. There's a remnant rising scattered across nations, different faces, different languages, but one spirit. And this message is finding them through you. So don't keep this fire to yourself. Share this word. Let someone else feel what you're feeling right now. Like this message, so it reaches further than the algorithm. Help break someone else's silence by amplifying heaven's sound through your obedience. And if this word has met you where you are, don't scroll without responding. Comment below. I hear the sound. Because your voice isn't passive, it's prophetic. And when you declare what you're hearing, you open doors for others to hear it too. It's more than a post. It's a signal in the spirit. And your response is a key. And if you haven't already, subscribe not just to be connected, but to stay aligned with what God is doing through voices like this. Words that don't tickle the ear, but ignite the spirit. If you've been wondering how to support what God is doing through these messages, consider sowing into it. Not out of pressure, but out of revelation. Every gift helps us reach further. Every act of generosity helps us carry light into darker corners. We don't ask for help, we invite partnership. Because what's happening here isn't just a message, it's a movement. And movements are fueled by obedience from both the one who speaks and the one who receives. So, here's your moment again. Not a moment to consume, a moment to participate, to respond, to release, to say, "This hit me, and I won't stay silent," and to sow back into the flow of what just poured into you. You don't need to do everything. You just need to do your part. And sometimes, that's as simple as saying, "I hear the sound." End quote. As simple as clicking share, as sacred as giving what God prompts. Obedience isn't always grand, but it is always prophetic. So let this word go beyond your screen. Let it echo. Let it multiply. The world is full of noise, but heaven is looking for sound, and your obedience carries it. There's something sacred about the in-between. That space between the promise and the fulfillment, between the word spoken and the word seen. It's a place most people try to avoid, rush through, or pray away. But for the chosen ones, it's where identity is forged. You've been living in that tension. You've said yes to God, but the breakthrough hasn't come yet. You've surrendered what He asked for, but the doors still look shut. You're walking forward by faith, yet it feels like the wind is pushing against you. This is the wilderness between prophecy and manifestation, and though it feels empty, it is deeply holy. Heaven isn't testing your strength, it's anchoring your surrender. Because before God brings you into the next, He refines what you carry now, not to punish, but to prepare, not to embarrass, but to equip. There are things He wants to build into your spirit so that when the doors open, you won't just walk through them, you'll carry weight with every step. This waiting room isn't a prison, it's a forge. It's where God burns away the fear of man, where He confronts the need for control, where He teaches you to worship when nothing changes, where He trains your eyes to see beyond circumstances and your ears to recognize His whisper in the silence. This is where you learn that God isn't just found in results, He's found in resilience. Many around you are chasing the promise, but you're being trained to carry the presence. There's a difference. The promise is the gift, the presence is the giver. And when you've tasted both, you'll never trade Him for what He gives. God is not withholding out of cruelty. He's building a container for glory. That's why the delay feels heavy. That's why the silence feels long. Because what he's preparing for you isn't casual, it's sacred. And sacred things require sacred weight. The prophet Isaiah declared in chapter 60, verse 22, "When the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen." Heaven's timing is not hesitant, it's precise. And when your yes remains steadfast in the space between, something beautiful happens. You become trustworthy. Not just talented, not just available, but trustworthy. God doesn't just pour oil on the gifted, He pours it on the willing and proven, those who stayed when others left, those who believed when nothing confirmed it, those who waited with eyes on Him instead of the clock. You've wondered if this season is a detour, but it's not. It's the exact place where God finishes what He started in you, where the noise fades, where the old is buried, where the new is formed in fire. This is why the temptation to quit has grown, because the enemy sees what you can't, how close you are to stepping into what's already been written. But quitting now would be like stepping away from the altar before the fire falls. And you didn't come this far for nothing. Your name has been called in the courts of heaven. Your process has not been overlooked. The angels assigned to your life are not confused or delayed. What's being built around you is just as important as what's being built in you. And when the time comes, they'll both collide in perfect alignment. Do not mistake silence for absence. Do not mistake tension for error. This is not a spiritual malfunction, it's divine construction. You are becoming more than you asked for. You are receiving roots deeper than you expected. You are being stretched to hold more than you thought possible. The discomfort is not the end. It's the evidence that transition is happening. You are shifting realms, not just physically, but spiritually. Old cycles are breaking. Familiar lies are losing their power. And though you may not feel it on the surface, the foundation of your spirit is expanding, preparing to host something heavy with glory. Chosen one. Don't despise the slow. Don't curse the quiet. Don't run from the wait. Because one day soon, you will look back at this wilderness and realize this was the place where you were made. Not in the miracle, not in the manifestation, but here, in the waiting, where your spirit whispered, "Even now, I will trust you." And heaven never forgets a whisper like that. That whisper becomes a record in heaven, a sound that never fades. And when the appointed time comes, that quiet trust will roar louder than any miracle ever could. There comes a moment when everything you've walked through, everything you've carried, and everything you've endured begins to make sense, not all at once, but in quiet flashes of clarity, not in the spotlight, not in applause, but in the stillness of your spirit. You realize God was shaping you the whole time. Every tear, every betrayal, every closed door, every hidden night, it wasn't wasted. It was holy preparation. And now, you're standing at the edge of something eternal. This is no longer just about surviving. It's about stepping into what was written. You may not feel ready. Few ever do. But heaven isn't looking for readiness. It's looking for agreement. And your life, whether you've realized it or not, has already been saying yes. With every refusal to quit, with every whispered prayer, with every act of obedience, no one saw but God. You didn't need a crowd to qualify you. You needed the crushing, because the crushing broke off who you thought you had to be, and revealed who you were born to become. Chosen one. This is the beginning of your final assignment, not in the sense of last, but in the sense of culmination. What every scar, every shift, and every surrender has been leading to. You didn't just endure all of that to stay hidden. You endured it because God was building something in you that the earth now requires. There is a calling upon you that cannot stay dormant any longer. The nations may not know your name yet, but hell does. And more importantly, heaven has written it in the scrolls. There is a weight to your life, a spiritual gravity that draws heaven's attention and shakes the plans of the enemy. You're not just sensitive, you're spiritually strategic. That's why you've never been able to settle. Why compromise always made you sick. Why fitting in felt like suffocation. Because you weren't born to blend. You were born to stand apart and stand for something. This world is loud with counterfeit purpose, fake fires, empty glory, staged obedience. But your calling is not a performance. It's a commission. And now the heavens are ready to send you in full force. Because your heart is no longer chasing affirmation, it's aligned in assignment. As Paul wrote in his letter to the Philippians, chapter 1, verse 6, "He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus." He never starts what he won't finish. And you, yes, you are his work in progress and his message in motion. You don't need a perfect resume. You don't need flawless faith. You just need to keep stepping forward, even if the ground shakes. Even if the path is narrow. Even if your voice trembles. Because the final assignment was never about ease. It's about eternity. There are people waiting for what's in your mouth. There are regions waiting for the fire in your bones. There are systems that will crack under the weight of your obedience. You are not one of many. You are one of the marked by fire, marked by wilderness, marked by surrender, and now markers for deployment. Don't shrink back. Don't rationalize the cost. You've already paid in tears what others fear to pay in faith. And this is the hour when everything God has been developing in secret begins to unfold in divine order. You won't need to push your way forward. The doors you walk through now will be ones no man can shut. Not because of who you are, but because of whose you are. So walk, not as someone testing the waters, but as someone sent with authority. Your assignment is not theory, it's activated. Every attack that came against you was confirmation of what you carry. Every delay was sharpening your discernment. Every no was a divine redirection. Every stripping was sacred alignment. You are no longer becoming. You are. And heaven is ready to move through you like never before. The final assignment requires your full yes, not just for a moment, but for the rest of the race. And this time, you won't run alone. You run with angels. You run with oil. You run with fire. You are not who you used to be. You are who God always saw, even when others couldn't see it. Even when you couldn't see it yourself. Now, step forward. The scroll is open. The time is now. And as you step, the earth will know a chosen one has answered. Not with noise, but with undeniable, holy obedience. Chosen one. If you've made it this far, if you felt the weight of every word, if something stirred, burned, or broke loose inside of you, this was for you. Heaven does not speak without purpose. You were not just scrolling, you were summoned. These words weren't just written to inspire, they were crafted to activate. And now that the scroll has been read over your life, the only question left is, what will you do with it? Don't just let this be a beautiful moment. Let it become a beginning. Let it be the line in the sand, the place where you said, I choose to carry it. I choose my assignment. I choose my crown. Oh, if this message lit something inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Someone else is waiting in silence for what just shook you awake. Like this message, so it continues to find those walking through darkness. Share it as a prophetic act, because your obedience could be the doorway to someone else's destiny. And when your spirit is ready to stay connected to words like this, to messages born not from trend, but from fire, subscribe. We're building a space for the remnant, for the wild ones, for the obedient. And if you feel led, if this word was more than just encouragement, sow into it, not out of guilt, but from revelation, because what you sow into fire returns as movement, clarity, and multiplied impact. Now, take a moment. Comment below. Assignment accepted. Let the realm of darkness know you didn't just hear this word, you answered it. You are chosen. You are ready. And the time is now.